Hey, parents and students, I hope you are doing well. I wanted to introduce our course to you a little bit differently, given some of the changes that we'll start off with. So this video is going to be a little bit more informative with how we use Canvas. And also it's going to walk you through a few other things that will help you to hopefully enjoy the course, but also to be ready to roll with it when we start class on Tuesday, which will be for us July 21st. Want to take a moment to introduce myself. For a lot of you I've met, but it's going to be wonderful to work with you. Some of you I've seen in the hallway, others of you I've seen maybe out on the athletic field or something like that. But I'm really looking forward to being able to interact with you, instruct you, and then also learn from students. That's one of the cool things I think about being a teacher, is that we not only teach them a lot of things, but we also have a lot to learn. So it's kind of a neat little thing. With that being said, just a real quick thing. I hope that you plan to attend the junior um, time on Thursday, where you can pick up your textbooks, your syllabus. I'll have guidelines on how to actually use what's called Launchpad with the fabric text. We're going to be using that a little bit differently. The primary reading, unless I say otherwise, will in fact be the AMSCO that students should have the PDF for, but they're also going to get a physical hard copy. They can keep it at home. They can bring it with them. If we get back to school, let's cross our fingers that that will be soon. And then also, you'll notice that with the fabric text, it's quite a bit bulkier, but we're going to use that more or less really to drive the skills that we want to really see students develop over the course of our year. Okay, so, and they will have what's called Launchpad access. I will provide them a code and details and directions on how to set it up. We're going to use that primarily as, like I said, a text that they'll be reading some short documents most weeks and also analyzing them and so forth. Okay, so please stay tuned on that. So a lot of students are asking in a couple of my emails that I saw just a couple of days ago, what do we really need to have ready to roll when that first day of school starts? Okay, well, the first couple of things are pretty much what they should be working on and ready to basically have by the time that really they track back in. And the first thing is the AMSCO Chapter 1. Now, Unit 1, if you didn't know this, covers from 1491 to around 1607. It is the second shortest unit of our year, minus Unit 9, which will be toward the end. So we're only going to spend about a week on Unit 1. All right, but it does set up the idea of, colonization with Britain and France and other countries, but Britain usually gets the most attention as far as America is concerned. Okay, and so they want to be able to have that read. If they want to take notes on their own, if they want to use the template that I sent out, that's fine. There's a template for every chapter that I'll assign them. They can use the template or they can use their own strategy. But it's very important for them to have some notes. It's impossible for us to cover every little nook and cranny, if you will, of the reading. So we're going to do a lot of analysis of things, which really requires them to have some of those details previewed and also studied. So just to point that out, the document analysis, we're looking for students to really make an effort to complete. What I'm most interested in for that assignment, a couple of you have sent me emails about it, is I want to see kind of where you are with how you can break a document down. Now, I don't assume that students entering this class already know how to do that. If they've had AP World, then they've already had a lot of practice. But some of my best students in the past have been AP World and also honors students. Okay, but what I don't assume is that, okay, you're entering there already knowing how to do it. So what that might mean is that for students that have had a fair bit of practice, they're going to basically be enhancing what they already do. For other students, it might be, not only enhancing it, but kind of getting more familiar with a format. So we're not looking for that to be a perfected assignment, but I do want to see where you are so that we can kind of maybe make some goals to help you move forward. Okay. I'm going to give you a registration, like I mentioned, for the fabric text. That should not take any more than 5 or 10 minutes for you to do. If you have some problems, then let me know. I'll try to get you on the right track there. And then our first class on Tuesday, we are literally, well, not literally, but figuratively, but I'm going to say literally in a sense, we are going to hit the ground running with those time period 1 themes. All right. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on how to basically, what is the grade structures and things like that. Those are things that in the syllabus you'll find. I'm certainly welcome to answer questions on those, but that's what I want students to be able to do. Now, with that being said, how is our course set up? Well, glad that you all asked that. So our course is set up basically to allow students to have as much of a depth with understanding and applying American history as we can. We start off, as I said, the era of Columbus, right before Columbus's famous voyage to the New World, and we end as modern as we can get, which, as you can imagine, is pushing it to get into the earlier 2020s and all that, or 2010, excuse me. Okay, but when students log into Canvas, they're going to notice that they have a page that looks like this. Now, the first week is probably going to look a little bit more, shall we say, lengthier. It's not anything for them to kind of get overwhelmed with, but what our administration has asked for us to do is that you'll notice that we have a syllabus page, which I'll show you all in a second, and we also have a week at a glance. Really what the week at a glance is it walks you through how to basically move forward, basically to structure your week so that you're not waiting until Wednesday or Thursday to complete everything. All right, and I'll get to that more in a moment. But the syllabus, you'll get a hard copy of this on Thursday when you all have your day that you come and get your materials and all of that. But what I do want students and families to do is preview the syllabus. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I do ask that students, in this case, they'll probably want to upload it to Canvas, but there's a little syllabus checklist, basically making sure that students, if they have any questions, and parents too, of course, that they can ask, and more or less that they give me a checklist. Yep, I read this. I know what you expect. That way we're all on the same page. Okay. And all the students need to do is, you'll notice that the syllabus has all of the pages 1 through 10. This part right here is only syllabus review and student information. Okay, so that's basically page 9 and 10 of the syllabus, but it's in one shorter document. But all students will need to do is submit that to Canvas. Now, for students and families that don't really like a lot of their personal information on Canvas, I understand that. If you want to, give me that as a hard copy, assuming that we get back, let's hope that we do, that's fine. But I do want to have, the ability to be in contact as best I can. So if you feel more comfortable sending me an email that has that information, I'm fine with that too. But the main thing is that we have open communication and that we have the ability to really have a good relationship. I'm a firm believer that teaching is about relationships. We have to be able to challenge our students, but we also have to be able to give them support. And also that means that families also need to be in the loop about what's going on. The cool thing about having taught at FA for 17 plus years now is that I've taught a good number of your older children, or in my case, young adults, I would call them. And so it's really cool. It's a blessing, if I can use that term, to be able to say, I've made this connection with this family, and it's very important for me that I do that. Okay. Now, with that being said, you'll notice that if you scroll down here, that there's a link that basically is a getting to know you meeting link. Okay. And it looks like this once you log into it. The reason I like to set these up within about the first 3 to 4 weeks is, one, I like to get to know the students, and I like them to get to know me some. So these are really meant to be about a 15 to no more than 20-minute, really meet and greets. And the things that I really like to get to know is, what are their interests? A lot of students have some great interests, some great talents. Last year, I maybe wouldn't have known that some of my students were, aspiring musicians or wanting to go in this career or whatever. So it really gives me the opportunity to get to know them, right? And this is very informal. It's meant to really be things that allows me to connect with them better. And then we get into, obviously, what are their goals for American history? Okay, these students are driven. They are, going to do their work. They're going to, follow through with things. I don't have any, concerns about that as of now. But on the other hand, we also know that, perhaps, out of the 17 I think I have on my roster, probably one to two of them, if we're lucky, are going to go in a career that specifically is in the history field. I remember, I grew up in Southern Ohio, as a lot of you might know. So we don't use the M before the ish again. Anyway, just joking around there in some ways. But anyway, and so what I noticed is that in 105 graduating class members of my graduating class, I think I'm the only one that actually went in the direction of teaching history and also majoring in history. So, what does that mean? It means that these students have a lot of talents. They have a lot of unique skills that, obviously define them. But I also want to be able to see, how can I help them to have the best year possible, so that we're not just, okay, we're learning a bunch of facts here, but I'm actually providing them with the opportunity to really make a course that's relevant. The one thing I like to tell people, even adults that I talk to outside of working with students, is that one of the things about our subject of social studies and any of the subjects is the idea of helping these students develop citizenship skills. And so, I'm interested to see, what kind of, goals do they have, where do they want to be at the end of the year, that they're not at when the year first starts. Because I'm a firm believer that life, and in this case, our history course, is about progress. We study that progress throughout time, but we also want to see that in our own lives. Okay. And then thirdly is how can I help them, to establish and also achieve these goals. Okay, so all the students need to do is simply pick a time that works for them. I think every week has like 35 different slots. So there's a lot of opportunity for them, but I would like for them to do that early on, like the first 3 or 4 weeks. Okay. Parents, you're more than welcome to attend if you want to. I'd love to hear your thoughts on things as well, if it works into these time slots. So anyway, please feel free to attend, and we're all in this together. We certainly all want to see success across the board. Okay. So anyway, just a quick thought there. So the question is then, all right, we've got the syllabus previewed, you've established that, you want to meet on a certain day. The question is, where do we get into the actual course? Okay. As far as, organizing your time, organizing your week, etc. And this is going to be basically what you see. Okay, so I won't spend a lot of time on this, but you'll notice our class days will be Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then I want to try to set up, this will be optional, but strongly encouraged, on Fridays from about 11 to noon time. We can adjust that if we need to. But I'd like to set up, a time where we can maybe try to end our week with maybe focusing on a skill that we've not gone into as much detail, or maybe there was a conversation we were having. That's what I like to call lessons, discussions, whatever you want to call them. And, that gives us an opportunity to bring some closure, answer any questions. Assessments will usually be done, depending on the style, on Fridays. So the students will have the opportunity to work from like 8 a.m. until usually midnight that evening on the assessment. Anyway, we'll get to that more in a second. And so what does that mean? It means that, and this week is a little bit lengthier than what you'll see moving forward, but I like to give some details. So you'll notice, and we'll see this more in a moment, so just bear with me, that I like to set up a week in organizing tasks, like what things do students need to do Some of these are going to be encouraged. Some of them are going to be required. Okay, so anyway, just keep that in mind. But you'll notice a lot of the things that you'll see under at home for Monday, these students, if they followed through with, the summer assignment, they should be able to really have the AMSCO text basically checked off, those kinds of things. And then we get into things that are kind of new. Okay. And so again, we're not going to have class until 9 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay. But it'll be for a full 60 minutes, pedal to the metal, really hitting a lot of these themes with the details that we need to. Okay. So very important that students are checking this regularly. Okay. And then you'll notice, like, as we transition to Unit 2, in the case of the end of week 1, I will always post, if the students want to use the AMSCO guides, then certainly we can do that. Okay. So very important to keep that in mind. Okay. So with that being said, you might be wondering, and this is a student view of this, by the way, you might be wondering, okay, there's a lot of things under there. What do I need to do with this? Okay. So this is where the directions on the homepage become important. Okay. So like, for example, unit 1, like I said, very short as far as the amount of time we spend on it. So what I'm going to have students to do is there's a little, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Gilder Lehrman, but it's a really neat website, and also it does graduate school programs for studying adults and all. But anyway, they have a lot of really great resources, videos, documents, etc. And so what I would like for students to do between Monday and Tuesday is simply watch that video. It's like 8 minutes and 45 seconds. And, you'll notice that when you click on that, all right, it gives you some details, like take some notes on this, be ready to discuss it or to ask questions if you need to. And you'll notice that the link is right there for you to use. Okay. So again, it's a resource for you to kind of get acclimated. Okay. And then you'll notice, well, where we go from there? Well, and you'll notice I have each of these as a day. So I would encourage students to be doing these over the course of a day or so. And you'll notice that this one says Unit 1 chronology. All right. So one of the big things is understanding what is transpiring before, during, and then in some cases also after we basically are studying a time period. Okay. So, historians love to use the word contextualization with this, and students are going to get really good at this with how they write, how they think. But this is something that, you want to keep in your noggin, as my mom used to say, because what it's going to allow you to do is to understand, how certain events are happening. One of the big things that I think is just a personal insight on my part is people are like, well, history is just about facts and memorizing quote unquote dates. I don't know if I would entirely agree with the dates thing, because you can memorize 100 dates and still not understand history, but understanding the place of events and how they relate to what's going on is a very important thing to keep within a chronological framework. Okay, so this is going to be where we're using the fabric text. Okay, so you'll notice I'm going to show you how to access this using the Launchpad in a moment, but you'll notice that this is usually going to be about a page. Students, again, they might want to take some things down. Again, they're building upon their knowledge and their understanding so that when we have class discourse and conversation, they can bring into it some of these observations. The cool thing too is that when we start to use evidence to not only support contextualization, but also historical arguments, there's a lot of these facts and also details that they can use. Okay, so they're building upon things to be able to help them be successful with understanding it beyond just who did this, who did that kind of thing. Okay, so I'll show you how to access those pages with Launchpad, but you'll notice using page 39. Okay, all right. I'm not going to go over all of these, but again, unit objectives. I'm going to provide the students with a set of objectives and then an outline as well that will help them to try to organize their thoughts. But you'll notice that all these different things are basically, okay, are you doing this Monday? Are you doing this? Now, students are going to have to do some work over the weekends to be able to read, their AMSCO text. Okay. So that, that's something that they have really between then and Tuesday to get that done. But you'll notice again, I said in my previous video that I like to tell students that you're going to be busy. That's kind of an assumption, to have or an expectation, excuse me. But here's the other thing about that is that, I don't really do track out homework as far as, major projects and things, but they want to make sure that they're constantly working. A 5-day plan is basically what we want them to really do. Okay. And to commit to that plan for about 30 minutes for each one of those days, whether it's reading for secondary information or, you're kind of getting into the document exercises. So we'll get to that in a second. Now, where we're going to use the fabric text, you'll notice, unless I tell you all otherwise, is, like I said earlier in my discussion here, one of the big things that actually it does a really great job with is helping students with skills. All right, so I'm going to pick about every week 2 or 3 skills that we're going to use as kind of building blocks to basically get good at writing about history, thinking about history, processing, information about history. And so you'll notice for week number 1, between Tuesday and Wednesday, okay, even though they don't have class Wednesday, they should be doing something, okay, that relates to, finishing reading, previewing the skills, etc. So that we can kind of get into that to Thursday and then also Friday, so that, if they have an SAQ to write, right, or whatever it might be, that we have a framework to kind of look at and we can talk about that and answer questions about it. Okay, but you'll notice for week number 1, I'm going to have them read page 6 to 7. I'll show you again how to access this in the Launchpad. You also have a hard copy of the textbook to use if you prefer those. But anyway, this kind of gives you a pretty good overview about active reading and effective note taking. Okay, now the guides are there for you to use, but what I'm going to challenge students to do maybe for week 2 is, okay, I'm going to use some of the strategies that are unique to this. And you know what? I'm going to do that for week 2. And then I'm going to figure out, okay, do I like, having a more organized guide? Do I want to use this? The big thing is we want students to be interactive with the information and not just being like, whoa, this happened, right? We want them to be thinking continuously. Okay. And then the other thing here, we're going to be doing another document exercise between Wednesday and Thursday, and then probably finish that up Friday for students that can attend that session. Okay. And this, again, is going to be giving them a little bit more depth with breaking down how to really analyze a document. Okay. And so, again, that's something that they'll want to read. And some of these are a little bit lengthier than usual. These 2 are a little bit more on the, I'd say, moderate side. Okay. But that's pretty much what you want to be able to do. Okay. And then you'll notice that most weeks, unless I tell you them otherwise, they'll have an assessment. This one, first week, is going to be at least a multiple choice one that kind of connects the themes, mostly source based. Okay. So this is really there as more of a reminder to them. Okay. And so, they want to make sure they've read, that they've connected things in class conversation, discussion, documents, etc. Okay. That way and there's a lot of responsibility with students really understanding this as they read, as I said. And then this week, we're going to try to at least introduce so that I can kind of see where they are with their writing, with a degree of formal writing with the short answer question. Okay, and there's several different formats of these, but we're going to focus more on the ones that is just a little bit more on the evidence side. You're not going to have historian commentaries to read. You will later, okay, but we'll get to that later. And you're not going to have those that deal with like a visual, although certainly those will come later with the SAQs. But we're going to do these again in bits. Next week, the whole skill focus will be on the SAQ, kind of breaking it down, whether regardless of what kind you have, and then also how to kind of use approaches to answering them. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Now, that's a lot to absorb. The question is, man, Mr. Baker, I've heard you talking about this Launchpad for that fabric text. That sounds pretty cool. How in the world are we going to use that? Well, there's a lot of ways that we can use it, okay? But how we are going to use it is basically going to be as a text. We're not going to be doing a lot of grades through it, although there's a feature there. Okay, so once students actually register, okay, they're going to have access to the entire textbook, okay, on Launchpad. All right, so there's some cool stuff to do. I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so I'm going to make this preview as student mode. Okay, and so what we notice, and pardon me as my phone's ringing there. So what we notice is that students, once they basically log in, they're going to have a lot of things that they can do. Now, starting off, the only thing I really want us to focus on is going to be the ebook. Okay, so students will click on ebook once they get it set up. Okay, and you'll notice all these different things there. I don't want you to worry too much about that. I'm going to click on title page. Okay. And you'll notice that eventually here, there we go, it's going to give you the title page. All right, and you'll notice it has a page there. Now, this is where I want students to pay attention, because you'll notice when you're reading those skills assignments, if you don't want to bring those big bulky books around with you, although they're a great resource, you can use this. Okay, so for example, we just said that when they're doing their first skill reading, right, about how to be an effective note taker, that goes from page 6 to 7. All right, so I'm going to type in 6, and guess what? There we are. Okay, so, and that's exactly what you need to read for that. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, well, Mr. Baker, what about, when we get to the documents and you have 3 or 4 or 5 documents per week, whatever it is, these documents are very short excerpts in most cases, or visuals. Okay, so for example, students are going to see the first document I want them to read that's in this text is actually going to be on page 11. All right, and I actually have the title. Now, a lot of you are like, well, Mr. Baker, my goodness, it brings me here. Where do I know where to start? Well, you're always going to see an AP analyzing sources, and you'll notice that when you start to analyze this, it's of course a visual, right? So it's not an excerpt from a person, okay? And so you'll notice that you've got questions for analysis. I'm not going to require the students to answer all of these because, first of all, it's a lot to do, and second of all, we're trying to get them to kind of do some different things. But if I were students, I would preview these, right? Especially because it kind of gets you in that mode of thinking about how to look at the content of a document, how to look at something else, along the lines of historical analysis. So, for example, explanation with things. Explain, what this image reveals about the Pueblo people. Okay, so that's going to be a great example. And I usually create document exercises. I'll pick 3 or 4 of these out of each unit or each week. I could do more, but I think 3 or 4 is a pretty good number to start off with. And these are going to be really good ways. You do not have to answer these questions, but there's going to be a template that I've created that gives you a task to do, or series of tasks to kind of help you break down that document. but these might be helpful to you. And we might even incorporate these as we do our document conversations, usually on Thursdays and Fridays, to kind of really get into that. Okay, now I just referenced a moment ago chronology. And I think it was page 39 is where you're going to look over the chronology to familiarize yourself. Again, we're going to hit 39. And you'll notice you've got key terms that you can look at. Okay, I'm not going to hit that feature, key people. And then right here is where you have the chronology. Okay, so again, all those different events and themes and things that are happening. Okay, and just so happens that for our first unit, like I said, you're really going to be looking at this through the lens of a week. For colonization, which is going to be, I'm sorry, yeah, basically colonization, British colonization mostly, unit 2, we're going to be spending 2 weeks on that. Okay, so again, this is a useful resource. And the other cool thing about this, and I completely forgot to point this out, so excuse me for being scatterbrained. Okay, but let's say a student wants to do a little bit more interaction with this. You'll notice you click on that, and let's say you want to highlight it, you want to add a note, which would be 1200 year. And let's say maybe you want to answer those questions to start off with. I'm just going to say question 1 answer. Okay, and let's say you save it. Okay, you go up to where it's called the notebook, and you'll notice I have a few of these already created. Okay, but you have all of these actually there for you to go back to if in fact you want to do that. Okay, so you're welcome to use that as you need to, but I think it's going to be a really useful resource, if anything, to lighten the load with the book, and to also give them an additional resource to use. Okay, so when I say fabric, page blah 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 or whatever, this is going to be the textbook that refers to. When I say AMSCO, that's going to be the other book that you have the PDF for, or the other thing. Okay, I know that's a lot to kind of process, so I appreciate your patience on that. But I really want to reiterate just how much I'm looking forward to working with y'all. And if there's anything I can do to help, whether it's clarify something, because I'd like to think I usually am pretty clear, but there's also times where those things come up where I need to go back and clarify things. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me, email, etc. And I would be more than happy to get back with you as soon as possible. And guys, I'm looking for a great year. We're gonna have a great year. Hopefully we'll be back in the regular classroom sooner, in the 5-period regular week. That's ideal, but we're gonna make the best out of this situation. We're gonna support each other in the process. And I really look forward to working with you parents. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with your young people. I do not take this responsibility lightly. And I just want to tell you, thank you for your trust with not just me, but also our school in general. Have a great one. And like I said, feel free if you need to contact me to do that. And I'll try to be as transparent with things as possible. Thank you and have a good one. Bye-bye.